Hi guys, I am Vitold and I went 1,000 kilometers with a few questions in my mind. Mainly, is KTM 1290 Super Adventure S going to be my next bike after I had ridden the R version a few weeks before that? I spent 5 bloody hours in the train for the first time in my life out of my free will, as there was just one test bike in the whole country that I could find. And it was a priority, a top even priority for me just before winter comes. I wanted to have a clear mind on the matter, and I know that many of you want to know what the S version is like. Yeah, it's cool, but I'm so freaking confused actually. And I'll tell you why, so that maybe together we can solve this mystery. The R version that I had before had a bent front rim. It had a leak, oil or whatever that was, on the exhaust system, under the engine, and a malfunctioning indicator switch. And you can see that in my full review of that bike. I also linked it in the description and will give you another link in the end of the video to make it easier for you to see that. Here I'll tell you about how it feels to ride this crazy, super powerful, and I think badass looking and full of contradictions KTM 1290 Super Adventure S. What's okay and what's not okay, as there's a lot that you should know before putting your money on the table. Oh, there is. It is worth mentioning that I've ridden all new available bikes in this big adventure category, some older ones as well. No one is paying me for analyzing what they're like, and I don't need to give a crap if I'm going to get another bike from the manufacturers, as I'm making my assessments and reviews myself, renting bikes from random dealers just like you guys could. I feel it's important to do more than praise a product, to be given another one, and that's why it's done this way. And I'm sort of on a mission here, and I'm also in a market for this kind of motorcycles, so that you know that we are on the same page here. And let's go, as I would like to start off with a matter that absolutely blows my mind when it comes to 1290 engines from KTM, and this is pure heaven, guys. And still, yes, no one has paid me to say that this is sincere, and I really feel that it's an absolute perfection in most ways, and no other competitor is even close to being so enjoyable in terms of engine, as full of performance and capable of instantly raising adrenaline levels. 1301 cubic centimeters of engine displacement, so actually more than 1290 would suggest, and also the most in the category. The differences aren't huge, but if we're about to brag, this is 1 point already. Then there is 160 horsepower and 138 newton meters of torque. Impressive numbers, but other bikes here can have more power, like Ducati Multistrada V4 with 170 horsepower, BMW S1000 XR with 165 horsepower, and then BMW R1250 GS, that is the only one with more torque at 143 newton meters. Again, the differences aren't that huge, but all that matters. Not actually. KTM absolutely demolishes every single competitor when it comes to straightforward power, the raw power, the pulling power, and how quickly it starts shooting forward at any RPM and gear combination. Here BMW R1250 GS is good as well in this flexibility, let's say, task, but it's unable to compete as KTM quickly reaches levels of power that simply aren't there in the Big Daddy from BMW. At the highest RPM, the 4-cylinder S1000 XR may have more juice, but until it gets there, KTM is long gone already. So yeah, 1290 Super Adventure S or R is an absolute beast. Yet don't get it all wrong, it also does great when you are not in a mood for crazy rides and you might cruise at 60 kilometers per hour in the 6th gear and still be able to pretty nicely and comfortably accelerate. That's challenging even for a boxer in the GS, and of course it will shake, as this is an extreme task that no one does normally, but I've tried it and it will do it better than others. 140 kilometers on the highway? Sure, no problem. There's no annoying vibration that I could notice myself. And actually the S version that I've got had a short windshield from the R version, so all I could feel in terms of, let's call it smoothness at high speeds, was wind hitting me everywhere. But foot pegs, handlebar, and the seat seemed fine in terms of vibration. Now, there's one area where KTM kind of sucks until you fix it there. It's the engine sound that is really terrible with the stock exhaust. It literally sounds like a moped with no respect for the big bike's image. And people on the streets look at this bike so much. I was surprised. And the same thing happened with the R. So, well, this one here wasn't that much in your face with some darker colors, but clearly that orange and massive appearance do the job. I'm asking you to replace the exhaust with something that makes the bike sound like a motorcycle, and then beautiful things happen as we've got a V2 engine here, so 2 cylinders that then can sound super nice and sweet. And I was fortunate enough to meet a rider with an older 1290 Super Adventure S with an aftermarket exhaust, and that thing is proper. And I personally love the proper sound of a V2 with a good, powerful, big engine. So it's a default thing for me to do on this motorcycle, to replace the exhaust. So what I would like you to get from all that so far about the engine is that it's totally awesome with pretty much no weak spots whatsoever. It's also pretty gentle in the lowest RPM, doesn't get nervous, and the only issue that you will encounter will be that some rear tires cannot handle all that sometimes. The R version somehow, the one that I rode, was very eager in the sport mode to lift its front wheel. The S1 here would rather slip and slide as a hot rod, as if it wanted to drift all the way to another city. So yeah, tires matter here, especially that all this torque comes pretty much instantly. Now let's change the vibe, as I had very high hopes myself that the S will do better in the corners than the R, which that one wasn't really that great. The thing is that the S is not good enough in my opinion. Well, yeah, sorry, it actually felt slightly better than the R and was more predictable in any turns at any speeds, but in one area it was definitely worse, and it was low speed stability. So whenever you're riding in the city, for example, between the cars, when you are maneuvering, when you're making U-turns or super slow turns in the city's side roads, or no matter where, in fact, whenever it's slow maneuvering, the R was amazing, and likely I think it might have been the best bike in the whole class, thanks to its position, it's staying under control and riding exactly where you wanted it to at lower speeds. But here, not so much. It felt almost exactly like a V-Strom 1050 that I wasn't happy enough with in this particular area. This one here, the S, is, I feel, more stable when riding in a straight line than a V-Strom at very low speeds. But then riding and avoiding cars' mirrors wasn't enjoyable for me. Well, it was freaking awesome in the R. So what in the bloody world happened? Ha! There is a 19-inch front rim, there's a smaller 17-inch rim in the rear, there's lower suspension, there is electrically adjustable suspension, and I couldn't control it as easily in those circumstances. There can be 3 reasons, I think. First is the position, which was more like sitting in a bike, while on the R it's more like sitting on a bike. Later I tried and I raised the seat from the original lower 85 centimeters to the highest setting at 87 centimeters. It was more comfortable for me, interesting, and I felt more confident, but it didn't have such an impact. It didn't enhance the low speed stability so much. The second reason could be simply different rim sizes, different suspension, and the geometry as a whole. That's more likely, but I'm not sure we can clearly define it, we can isolate it. And the third reason was sort of diagnosed by the dealer after I mentioned that I felt like its handlebar was much harder to move, much harder to turn. And apparently, KTM got a new idea and ordered them, the dealers, to tighten this thing here in the spot that you see that's holding everything up front, the front suspension there along with the front part of the frame. It was tightened quite significantly, so maybe this contributed to this particular S variant feeling like it was resisting more when turning. However, my thinking now is that if this is KTM's new idea, it means that this is how it's going to be from now on. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to apply only to the S or to the R variant too, but it definitely can be one of the reasons for the S handling worse and not being as easy to ride at lowest speeds. Please keep that in mind. I'm talking about lowest speeds, maneuvering speeds, up to 15, maybe 20 kilometers per hour. And that's a huge pity. At higher speeds it was okay when it comes to cornering, actually it was better than the R, but it's not as neutral and definitely not encouraging to play with as I would expect after the R. And that is a huge huge surprise for me. It was actually a pain for me. If it was at least at the level of the new Tiger 1200 GT, it would be just fine. That bike is super stable and stays at any angle that you want it to stay, and if you want to push it further, it's effortless. Here it's not that much effortless. It does what you tell it to do, but there is much more convincing involved, and it could have been much better, I am sure about that. So handling isn't the strongest point either at higher speeds, and here in the S variant, definitely not at crawling speeds. Once again, let me finish off with that as a bottom line. So it becomes a question of how we all ride. How do you ride? If you ride more in the city and play with a bike below those speeds, I know I would prefer to be on an R. Ha! Freaking surprise to me as well. But if I would be doing more high-speed touring, which I know many of you guys do, or just live outside the city and ride a lot in non-urban areas, then I will be fully happy, I think, with the S version, and that would likely be my choice. Still, all in all, this part isn't as fun as I would like it to be. I also played with the modes here in the S and kept changing between comfort, street and sport, and while in how it was soaking up the bobs there was a visible difference, none of these modes improved stability and control at low speeds. Confirmed. Speaking of mode and suspension, the mentioned ones apply to on-road, and I was happy seeing that they differ between each other and are all usable. Comfort is really pleasant and plush without that, boat-like feeling that some bikes get once they are set to their softest setting. Here it is within reason, while staying very composed when riding over rough stuff. Actually pretty comfy and much better at eliminating road imperfections than the R, I think. Well, like a ton actually. So I'm pretty sure about that, at least in the standard setting of the R. Then there's the street mode that's somewhere in between sport and comfort, and if the bike had only this one mode, I would be totally fine with it, I think. But then there's the sport mode that indeed feels the stiffest, but not to the point that you cannot ride over rougher parts of the roads. And that's why I said that all the modes I think are usable, as you can stick to sport and still be fine. It would be a tad maybe too harsh for me, myself, but I see places where at times I think I might want to play with it. So all in all, the suspension adjustment is fun and can give you something to experiment with. There's also an automatic mode, which was an interesting idea, but I'm not sure how it is supposed to work exactly. To me, it felt like kind of a street mode, so I would say default mode, so somewhere still in between the sport and comfort. You can also create your own, which is cool. It's called advanced if you are into playing with other settings that are there as well. There is also an anti-dive option that for some reason can be switched off. I'm not sure why on the road you might want to do that, probably not. Off-roading, yeah, that would make sense, maybe during some Baja race on the desert sands, but I believe that there's something going on with it and I'm happy that it's there. Does it prevent from diving? No, it doesn't. But diving isn't terrible when this option is on, and that's fine. There are bikes in this segment that dive way worse, so yeah, it's all right here. And I'm glad that someone is working on ways to reduce that. And I wish KTM good luck here, as this largely contributes to retaining control over the bike in plenty of situations, of course mostly when braking and when cornering. And there are also specifically riding modes that apply mostly to the engine here. And for me there are two that count, and they are street and sport. So basically normal and crazy freaking cool. In street mode, traction control is all the time in your face and it doesn't let the bike slip too much, while in the sport it's pure fire. But the nice and cozy type of it, not the crazy fire burning your home. Throttle doesn't become harsh and either 100% engaged or 100% disengaged, like in some other bikes it happens, especially at lower speeds in the lowest gears. But the bike's engine is still easy to control, while traction control lets the rear wheel slip way more. Maybe the tire wasn't the best, but anyway, it was fun. I suppose that if the tires were better, or at least as good as in the R version, which was absolutely completely new, it had like 200 kilometers when I got it, or maybe the streets were cleaner, as I rode in a place that I normally don't ride since I had to go 5 hours in a train, then the bike would be doing wheelies like the R all the time. And I'm not sure I had it up even once, but I sure as hell was making it slide all over the place at pretty scary speeds. The way traction control was responding seemed like the biggest difference in the real world riding between those modes to to me. And it wasn't like in a Harley that the bike would accelerate much more quickly, or like in a Triumph that it would just engage in the throttle in a rapid way at lower speeds, making it nervous and harder to control. So despite my efforts here, and also spending some time in a warm city just sitting there and getting stuck in traffic lights, heat management was also really good. I've got to mention that. And I heard the fans go on a few times and they did a good job, just like in the R, even in the hotter weather. About the equipment, there is heel hold, which I haven't had a chance to engage really. Also a rear spring preload, which can raise or lower the rear of the bike, because the softer it gets, the more it sags. The harder it is, the less it sags. I haven't played with that too much, and I kept it in standard setting, just as I would probably do on a daily basis. It would probably make sense when you put some luggage, a heavy passenger or a light passenger, but you are heavy. I had a quick shifter on this bike. I used it, and I can speak well of it. And first of all, the transmission is precise in my opinion. It's easy to change gears. The lever works light, and if it wasn't hidden so much underneath some other components of the bike on the left side, of course, it would be perfect. That's kind of weird. You'll see in my R version review that once I sat on the bike, I couldn't even find the bloody lever. Same kind of thing happened here, which just tells me that it's just too short and too much to the right. It's too narrow. On the other hand, the foot angle with the seat in the lower position worked better for me than that in the R. And also finding neutral is very easy, and that's, wow guys, that's unbelievable today. But it's super useful, so thank you KTM. As for the quick shifter, I think we may keep the name here as it's pretty quick. It doesn't get stuck at all and always worked for me, and I'm rather picky here with those systems. You can clearly feel it engaging, but with that performance, it's super useful, and I believe that it's totally worth the money, especially that it works both ways and it still does its job switching up even if you don't have the throttle fully open. And that wouldn't work in, for example, Versys 1000, for example, and some other bikes as well. So it's all good here with the transmission. There was also the nowadays standard front radar on this S variant that I deliberately left alone to itself, as I cannot help it but just not trust any motorcycle with this system, and I would much rather have a blind spot monitoring system with a radar in the rear for my own protection, to be able to assess the situation, to have information, but not really for the bike to, do things for me, to slow it down a little bit or speed up a little bit. I like that in cars, not here. The brakes here in the KTM are great, I think. Maybe the next best system after BMWs, is they are super easy to dose. There's no sudden engagement like in a Triumph, for example, and you can squeeze the lever harder and harder and just have your eyes move closer and closer to your visor, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's a really cool feeling, I gotta say. Maybe I think it's that anti-dive system doing its job here. The rear brake works, and that's not obvious. No, it's not. That's why I'm mentioning. So it brakes, and you may stop using it alone if you want it in many situations, while ABS only helps without getting in the way. So all good marks here from me. Then I was not fortunate enough to have this unit blessed with its original windscreen, but instead with that short from the R. And yeah, you don't question likely the only demo motorcycle in the country, so I was happy with that. But I cannot tell you anything about wind protection, as there's no wind protection regardless of the setting of this little smiley thing. One thing to mention though is that the adjustment system wasn't working as smoothly as in a brand new bike. So I'm guessing that it requires cleaning with some time, as some stuff from the road gets stuck there in the mechanisms, and it's not as brilliant of an experience as on the day one. That's a useful observation. Please remember to clean it. The adjustment there is pretty tough when it gets dirty. The next comfort-related or discomfort-related item in this bike is the seat. It's great if your wife tells you that you spend too much time riding motorcycles. Get yourself a KTM with this particular seat on the ass, and after 40 minutes your bottom will be so sore that you will want a break, that you will want to finish riding. So it is terribly hard, even though it doesn't immediately feel bad. Sneaky, but then it's not cool. I'm really serious about that. It needs a replacement or a modification if you like it on the softer side like I do, or maybe a different, let's say taller one, straight from KTM would do the job, it may be worth a try, as I myself might want to have it still a bit higher myself. So maybe you can combine those two aspects. Funny thing is that here at 87 centimeters, so higher position, it felt so much lower than the 88 centimeters in the R, and there I was far from fully placing my both feet on the ground at the same time, while here you can see that it's as if nothing happened to me. My guess is that the bike sags so much more, especially in the back, so maybe this is where I would use the rear preload option. See? But I only got the idea now. The handlebar is not the widest. I loved it in the R and it still feels adequate here, but because of the handlebar moving harder, I think that having it wider in this particular item would be helpful, as it would require less force to move and could provide you with more control when steering. It's great for city riding as you easily fit into most spaces. That's really cool, I appreciate that. If just that stability at crawling speeds was better in the S, I would freaking love riding it in the city. There is a front LED cornering light with that thing in the middle being the radar. No worries, it's there to stay. It's actually absolutely beautiful. Cornering lights are on the bottom, and here you see how they work. Simply light up when needed, so in a corner. The lamp seems to be doing a good job, as car drivers mostly looked like they were aware that I was behind them when I was approaching them. High beam in heavy city traffic definitely does the job, so all fine here. But here's the second big but. Aside the precision and agility when handling at lower speeds. This one is actually a big concern, as this is what I referred to in the beginning, saying that I managed to confirm some things that wouldn't let me sleep at nights after riding the R. So I can hereby confirm that the indicator switch is a faulty design, and it simply isn't going to work right from the beginning. The salesperson, cheers by the way, immediately had a malfunction when demonstrating how to use all the stuff to me. And I caught it several times in traffic when I was doing one thing and the indicator was showing something totally different, or rather the opposite, which is not good. This is a serious safety matter in my opinion, as what happens is that even though you press the switch to switch the indicators off, they stay on. That's the problem. And you may press it several times and it just won't work. It just won't work. I know why. The switch itself is flimsy and moves in all directions. You can see that immediately. There's no real click when switching it off, and this is new design. Some bikes like the 1290 Super Duke GT have the previous system with a working and clicking switch. That's good. Here it says fuck off basically. I'll blink for as long as I want, and this is ridiculous again. And I've done some tests, and please take a look how it works. I know I've seen all your comments, guys, under the R video, and yeah, all right, let's just say that it took a moment to realize that it needs to be pressed simply longer. It's good enough from top to bottom. It does nothing. Circular motion does nothing. You need to press it, but ha! Hell, I pressed it hard and long, and what? I don't know, it's just broken. See, when I do it quickly, you hear the clicking? What the is wrong with this? If you just press it very quickly, it's not enough. You've got to pretty much hold it, which is simply wrong. This is the most basic thing that doesn't work as intended in this awesome motorcycle. This is serious enough that I'm convinced, I think that KTM should recall all motorcycles with this system that they have sold and that are on the market, and either fix it in them or install a now working system before many people get run over or hit from behind, side or front, since their bike is having an indicator on, even though they're actually planning to go forward. And imagine car or another bike pulling out and cutting someone off. And also one more thing, in the user's manual it says to press it. It doesn't say for how long, but it doesn't say to push it down. It does nothing. Pushing it down just makes you possibly extend the motion, so it takes longer. So in fact it does maybe work, but that's not how it should be done. You see what I've been doing and when it works. Remember that this applies to the newest 1290 Super Adventure with this specific switch type. Okay, then to the more nice topics, because people do like looking at those bikes, both S and R, and I think that it might be partially bright colors, at least partially bright colors of both versions, that grab all that attention. So in the S it would be more likely the one with more orange than just a little slab and otherwise all gray. And there are only two colors here so far, gray with this much orange that I probably could live with, and the one with less orange, which is actually sad, boo. But mine was grabbing a lot of attention anyway and getting a lot of looks despite sounding like a lawnmower. All eyes on you. Don't tell me you don't like that. I like that. Many of us like that. Now about the crash bars, as it's an interesting case of an accessory that I believe is needed, looks cool, but I kept kicking it when supporting myself in the traffic lights. And I've never kicked as many BMW Boxer engines, the cylinders, in my whole life as I've kicked those two crash bars on this particular KTM, the S version. Be warned and have your answer ready for when you get asked. Who were you fighting that your legs are so banged up? The mirrors are really good, but it's a tough one since I wasn't using them a lot, mostly just flying next to things. Still, I think that they are well positioned and big enough. And about that flying next to other vehicles, actually it wasn't the case all the time, as this S wasn't feeling that much provocative. I would say that this is because of the position. It was like 50% of the R's craziness. And I'm super surprised myself that I'm saying it. And even though I really don't want to express it, this is how it felt. And this is the time in this video when I'm again wondering if I wouldn't be better off with the R and not the S myself. I like the proportions of the S so much. It looks very muscular, it looks very strong and also heavy, which I like, but it's weighing 220 kilograms and it doesn't feel too heavy at a standstill. On the other hand, worth mentioning. Certainly much lighter than the R, as that one is taller itself due to taller suspension. Here the ground clearance is just above 22 centimeters and front and rear wheel travel is at 20 centimeters. There's a 23-liter fuel tank, 19-inch rim in the front and 17-inch rim in the rear. And there's a chain to propel your KTM, a chain that loves to stretch very early on due to all that power and torque. One more reason to choose a drive shaft instead, which you cannot choose here. You know that at some point you will have a problem with the chain and you will have to service and replace it. If you've heard my voice before, you likely know that I prefer anything over a chain. So what we've got here in the KTM is far from my perfect scenario from my perspective. However, there are other perfect things like keyless ignition and fuel tank, and that is perfect. Generally, things except from the indicators were working fine. Even this little storage that Ducati should learn how to build from KTM. Quality of this KTM looks generally fine. All fairings seem solid and nothing makes squeaking noises on a regular basis. Just keep in mind that windshield adjustment that may need your attention and cleaning, and also, you know, the starting button, which looks like a but whatever. The display is super nice, it's super clear with clean graphics and those great animations and explanations of things and options on the go. That's awesome, great work, and I'm super impressed. And for the record, it also switches on instantly with no delays, unlike in Africa Twin 1100 or Tiger 1200. It's responsive, it's not laggy, and it is easy to use. Your riding mode and suspension settings are here and there, but there's also a switch on the right handlebar that you can preset as a shortcut. Two display themes basically mean that it's either white or black. That's okay, fine, but wait, it can be automatic too. And technology surprises, right? A theme based on your morning or evening mood. Doesn't get better than that, right? Anyway, it actually can change too if you go to riding modes like rally. There also may be heated both seats and both grips. Cool. Now, as crazy as I was on the R, here I feel it's more of a comfy SUV with a Lamborghini engine rather than a sporty SUV with a Lamborghini engine. Maybe a part of that craziness and stimulation for me was the shakiness and the originally stiff suspension settings from the factory of the R. But this is some deep psychology that we're doing here, and it seemed like the difference between the characters is really big. It's so big that in the end of the day, I'm glad that you guys pushed me to go those 1,000 kilometers and check this S version. So let me finish off with giving a score to this KTM. And I'll put it this way. The final question is, would I buy it? It's a question that every single one of us is asking themselves. And I really don't know. What I would do is I would wait for BMW to show us the next new big GS, as I'm believing that whatever it will set new benchmarks in every area, maybe except for the engine performance, where it's when it's probably going to be only okay, and I'm not expecting too much drama there. Then I would see how to answer to that, as I love everything about the KTM in this S variant except for the lack of precision at low speeds, still not being eager to turn at higher speeds as well as it could be, except for the malfunctioning indicator switch that is dangerous and simply faulty. I'm not loving the chain, super hard seat, damn it. If I had to buy a new bike today, would it be this one? Most probably yes. And the worst thing to swallow would be the anxiety about the indicators. I would immediately give it an aftermarket exhaust regardless. Maybe I would go for an even taller seat, as I would have to replace or modify it anyway. I'm giving it a 7.5, and some may say that this doesn't reflect the crazy, impressive emotions of the performance that are being generated. And they will be right. Emotions are super important on a bike. I agree. Then some will say that it's too many imperfections, too many flaws in a bike that doesn't really want to turn that much. You cannot properly use the indicators and is not that super easy and precise at low speeds. So in the end, 7.5 I think should be pretty fair out of 10. But what do you guys think about it all? I've never been so conflicted inside. And please go ahead, do check my full review of the R variant and let me know your thoughts after you see me peeing my pants there.